If you ask almost everyone what is the king of all exercises, most likely they will answer the deadlift. This is probably the most respected exercise in all gyms. It's a symbol of strength. It's a lift that people proudly post on social media. And many believe that if you are serious about building muscle, deadlifts are absolutely essential. After over 40 years in bodybuilding, competing myself, coaching thousands of clients, and also studying the training of most successful bodybuilders in history, I completely disagree. But before some of you stop this video, let me make something very clear. I'm not saying that deadlift is a bad exercise. Far from it. The conventional deadlift is one of the best exercises ever invented for powerlifters and also for everyone who is interested in developing maximum strength. But bodybuilding is not powerlifting. The goal of bodybuilding is not to lift the heaviest possible weight. The goal of bodybuilding is about building maximum amount of muscle in the safest, most efficient, and most sustainable way possible. And these are two very different objectives that actually change everything. Unfortunately, many bodybuilders still choose exercises as though they are preparing for powerlifting competition. They judge the quality of their workout by how much weight they can lift, rather than how much muscular stimulation they create. And this is where I believe conventional deadlift becomes one of the most overrated exercises ever created in bodybuilding. Many of the greatest physiques in bodybuilding didn't use deadlift because they realized that will ruin basically their physiques. Frank Zen, for example, rarely used deadlift, if ever. Then you have Serge Nubre, who built amazing back, and he never used deadlift. Also Sergio Oliva, and Oliva built an amazing back while keeping his weights small. Remember that? This is a very important point. And he simply didn't do deadlift in order to build a tremendous back. Arnold also, although he started as a powerlifter, stayed away from deadlifts because he knew that deadlift will actually ruin that illusion of V-taper by thickening his waist. So he stayed away from deadlifts. And as you can see, the greatest bodybuilders ever didn't use that exercise because this is simply not a bodybuilding exercise. So let us begin with the biggest misunderstanding in bodybuilding. A lot of people believe that deadlift will benefit them because you're using so many different muscles while performing this exercise. For example, you're using your legs up to the point, then you use your glutes also up to the point, your back, your traps, your forearms, your core, and even your grip. But as I said, yes, you're going to use this muscle, but up to the point. None of these muscles will be actually targeted fully, with full extension, full contraction. But people still believe that because one exercise stimulates so many different muscles, it must be very effective, it must be very beneficial. But this is not how muscle growth works. Muscles simply don't know how impressive particular exercise looks. Also, muscles don't know how much weight you have on the bar. They don't know whether people in the gym are watching you or not. Muscles only respond and understand one thing, and this is mechanical tension. And this is where most people make a crucial mistake. They confuse the whole body effort with muscular stimulation. And these two are not the same things. The conventional deadlift creates enormous whole body effort. Almost every muscle contracts. Your heart rate goes through the roof, your breathing becomes difficult, your nervous system is under tremendous stress. But at the end, you are exhausted. And because you're exhausted, you think you've done something special. But being exhausted doesn't necessarily mean that you have created the best possible stimulus for muscle growth. And this is the lesson that many bodybuilders spend years learning. As you probably know from many of my videos, obviously if you have seen them, that muscles don't know exercises. They don't know what are you using. They simply respond to mechanical tension. This is the only tension that the body registers and responds with muscle growth. So that stimulus tells the body to grow and adapt. Nothing else. Not sweating, not exhaustion, not pain, not the applause you get after pulling massive deadlift. Just simply mechanical tension. And this is where many people become confused. They assume because the deadlift is one of the hardest exercises that you can perform, must be also at the same time one of the best exercises. After all, you're lifting an enormous amount of weight, your entire body is working, by then you're exhausted, you're breathing heavily, and it feels like that every muscle in your body has been trained. And this is exactly why deadlift has earned its legendary reputation. But bodybuilding has never been about creating the greatest amount of effort. It's about creating the greatest amount of muscular stimulation. So remember this is critical. Imagine you're asked to carry a washing machine on your back, 3 flights of stairs up to the 3rd floor. And you're doing it. You are going up the stairs, you're having a heavy washing machine on your back. You are exhausted, your legs have been working, your back has been working, your shoulders, your forearms, your core, everything has been working. And you finally get there, and you may think this was an amazing physical effort. And yes, it was. But will you ever grow from that? No, you will not. Because this is not what will stimulate the most muscle growth. And bodybuilding is exactly like that. It's not exhausting, stressing your whole body, your nervous system, also putting you under a lot of risk, but simply stimulating muscle growth of every single muscle in the best possible way. And this example with carrying the washing machine on the 3rd floor is exactly what happens in conventional deadlift. Yes, you use so many different muscles, you're under tremendous stress, you are sweating, your heartbeats go very high, you are simply fighting the resistance in order to make this effort to bring that washing machine on the 3rd floor. And this is exactly what happens with deadlift. You put tremendous amount of effort simply to lift the weight from the floor up. What happens? You engage the whole body, you stress your central nervous system, you cause so much risk, but you do not train every single muscle, and therefore they will not grow. And this is the mistake that many bodybuilders do. They simply confuse the difficult exercise with effective exercise, and this is exactly what deadlift is. It's an extremely demanding exercise, but it provides relatively poor stimulus for a particular muscle. And yes, by performing deadlift, you will develop tremendous strength, obviously strength of your back, midsection, your grip, ability to lift from the floor, that you will increase that strength for that particular movement, but strength and hypertrophy are not the same adaptation. So while powerlifters have to do that because this is the nature of their sport, you should stop asking what exercise let me lift the most weight. Instead, you should be asking what exercise makes this muscle work the hardest. And this is completely different playground. Unfortunately, deadlift tricks many people into believing they are making tremendous progress, simply because they can really improve deadlifts very quickly and they can start lifting much more weights in no time. So, for example, if you start doing your deadlift, you're a beginner, maybe you started with 60 kgs, in a month or two you will almost be on 100, in 3, 4, 5 months you will probably lift 140, 150 kgs. So on paper, obviously you're making progress because you're lifting much more, and you are wrongly believing that you will be changing because you're lifting more. But you will not be changing because the ability to lift more weight from the floor up, performing deadlift, has nothing to do with your muscle growth, as I have mentioned. Now, why you are improving so quickly? What is happening there? First of all, there are different types of adaptation. You're becoming stronger, and becoming stronger is directly related to your nervous system. So your nervous system is basically adapting to the movement. Second, you are learning how to perform this exercise. So you're also learning the skill. So your skill improves. So by improving your skill and adapting your nervous system, you are becoming stronger, but that has nothing to do with muscle growth. Now, what you should ask yourself is, would your muscles, your chest, your legs, your back, your arms, grow better if you perform different exercises, or deadlift is something that will give you more growth? Now, imagine two different bodybuilders. They are the same genetic potential, they eat the same food, same quality diet, and one is relying predominantly on deadlifts in order to lift heavier, while everything else is secondary. And another one is actually training a bodybuilding type workout in which he is targeting every muscle with most effective exercises and is not performing deadlift at all. So after 6 months or 12 months, who do you think will build more muscle? Although the first bodybuilder will become much stronger and able to lift in deadlift, the second one will definitely get much bigger because he was targeting every muscle with the bodybuilding type workouts. Different exercises, most effective exercises, high number of reps, high number of sets, and this is the recipe for growth. So you see two different bodybuilders, one relying predominantly on deadlift for muscle growth, another not even doing deadlift, but working his muscles in a completely different way. And the final result is that the first one will get stronger but not bigger, won't probably change at all, while the other one will change dramatically. Now, let us look at something that I believe is the biggest problem with conventional deadlift for bodybuilders. Every exercise carries certain degree of risks. You can injure yourself doing squats, you can injure yourself doing bench press, even pull-ups, even bent over rows. But what you need to bear in mind is always that ratio between benefit and risks. So in all my videos in which I explain the importance of basic exercises, like squats, bench press, pull-ups, etc., certain amount of risk is always there, especially if you are doing it in the wrong form. But benefits overwhelm the risks. If you are doing it in the right form, all these exercises, which I consider most effective, will actually benefit you greatly while keeping risk of injuries very low. Now, what is the story with deadlift? Now, while deadlift is an exercise which will give you benefits, as I mentioned, you will become stronger, especially if you're a power lifter or strength athlete, but you're not going to grow any muscle as you will be doing it if you're a bodybuilder, if you train like a bodybuilder. Now, the thing is that even if you do deadlift in the right form, the amount of risk is overwhelming, is through the roof. And the benefit, considering muscle growth, is absolutely minimal, if any. And now I will tell you most common injuries, hence risks, while performing deadlift, even in the perfect form. So let us start with lower back. Deadlift is an exercise which is considered to hit mainly lower back, and this is true. By performing deadlift, you obviously have to move that weight from the floor in the position in which you're almost parallel, your upper body is almost parallel to the floor, until you straighten upper body up. Lower back is under tremendous stress, not only the muscles, but also your spine. And that stress is unavoidable, regardless of form that you do. You can be doing that in the perfect form, but the amount of stress on your lower back is absolutely huge. So what happens with performing deadlift on a regular basis? Well, even the most experienced power lifters will tell you how many times they have injured their lower backs. They've caused so much inflammation in connective tissues in that area. Also, they had slipped discs. They've got injured many, many times. You know, people don't talk about it much, but if you find a powerlifter, talk to them about this, and you will see they will, if they're honest, they will open up and they will explain to you and tell you all about these different type of injuries, especially lower back injuries. You may ask, so well, how I'm going to develop my lower back? What about spinal erectors? Well, there are much better exercises, more effective on that particular area, that particular muscle, but also less dangerous, less risky. For example, I advise and I personally perform for my lower back hyperextensions, which is an excellent exercise for developing spinal erectors. Level of risks, 0. Benefit, 100. Also, some people may say, oh, but deadlift really affects my hamstrings, and how I'm going to develop hamstrings if I don't do deadlift? Well, answer is very simple. There are two exercises which I perform personally and advise to everybody. All my clients are doing it. When it comes down to hamstrings, the number one exercise is leg curls, either lying down or seated. So leg curls is an exercise which will target only your hamstrings, nothing else. Risk very low, benefit 100%. Second exercise, straight legs deadlift. But this is very different exercise than traditional deadlift. Actually has nothing to do with traditional deadlift. First of all, you're not lifting the bar from the floor. Second, your legs are straight, your knees are locked, and this is the hinge movement. Basically, it's a hip movement. So if you have seen my bodybuilding blueprint course, you can see how, when I demonstrate how straight legs deadlifts should be performed, I don't even go halfway down, because it has nothing to do with lowering the weight down. It only has to do with stretching your hamstrings under the load. And obviously, you just move your hips back and forward and back and forward. And this is straight legs deadlift all about. So it's nothing to do with traditional deadlift. Risk, again, 0, benefit 100. So you see, for your lower back and your hamstrings, you can benefit tremendously by doing these 2 direct hamstrings and lower back exercises, and lowering the risk of injuries to minimum. Another very risky part of your body that is tremendously stressed while you're performing deadlift is your biceps tendon. Not once I have seen so many people performing deadlift, and then in the middle of the rep you just hear some pop, and then you see the guy holding his arm, obviously biceps tendon ruptured. That requires an operation. That requires months, 3, 4, maybe 6 months of recovery, which means you're not going to be able to do anything. And why? Simply because you have been performing this exercise believing it's going to give you tremendous benefits, but you forgot about the risk. So like everything else in life, your business, your investment, other projects, you always calculate the benefit and the risk, and you always go for the option which will give you most benefit and least risk. So if the risk is low and benefit is high, you go for it. You don't want to go, you're not going to invest your money in stocks and shares where the risk is high and benefit is low. But why would you do that with deadlift? Risk is extremely high and the benefits are nothing when it comes to muscle growth. Now, another problem that happens often, and it happened to a few of my clients when they trained on their own while on holidays, they tried deadlifts, and they have returned with hernia. So, they were embarrassed to say that, they've done deadlift because I never asked them to do it. I explained to them, as I'm explaining to you, that the exercise is extremely risky and is not going to benefit them at all. Just going to put them at risk. And also that hernia is one of very common injuries and risks for people who perform deadlift on a regular basis, especially the traditional, very heavy deadlift with low reps. Now you may say, I've been doing this for years and never had that problem. Yes, you may not have that problem, but there are people who have different genetics. It's directly related to connective tissues as well. A little tweak in the movement, which is obviously happening all the time, little wrongdoing, and the stress can shift tremendously to your abdominal area, causing stress that will actually result in hernia. So do your research, talk to powerlifters, and see what happened. Do they have that? I know dozens of them who had hernia because they've been performing traditional deadlifts. Also, another very common injury is hip injury. That happens to many people while performing deadlift. So you need to understand that by doing this movement with heavy weights, you are putting tremendous amount of stress also on your hips. So they can get injured because they're very complex joints. And again, a little tweak, a little movement left to right, or losing stability, the weight, the stress will shift to one hip more than to another. Here we go, injury comes. So this is another one. Not to mention, obviously, shoulder injuries, very common in powerlifters, especially because of deadlift, because this exercise is extremely stressful for your shoulder joints because you're simply holding this weight and putting tremendous stress on your shoulders. Now, one of the biggest issues, the biggest problems, the biggest risk of deadlift is something that actually prevented so many successful and most of the greatest bodybuilders not to do deadlift, and this is the thickening of your waist. When you perform deadlift, you're using every single muscle, and that core section of your body is under the most of the stress. So midsection, your abdominals, but especially obliques will be under tremendous stress, and that may force them to grow. Look at any power lifter, look at their waist, look how wide their waist, how thick their waist is. Even bodybuilders who used to do powerlifting in the past and then turned bodybuilders never got rid of that thick waist. Why? Because years and years of deadlifting simply developed that area extremely thick. And if you are concerned about aesthetics, if you want to have a great V shape, which means broad shoulders, wide back, and small waist, you will definitely stay away from deadlift, and you will think twice about doing it again. You don't want to touch that area. This is why, for example, I don't advise doing abs with any weights, and there are only particular exercises that I advise for abdominal muscles. Why? Because I'm trying to avoid too much stress on obliques. You don't want obliques to grow. You want them to stay small. And this will contribute to the great V-shape impression and result. And if you are interested in bodybuilding, which is more about aesthetics and visual illusion than anything else, then think twice before you do deadlift again. And there is also something else which actually concerns me more than any of these physical injuries, which can be tremendous, and they can end up your career. And this is actually the stress of the central nervous system. So being extremely hard exercise, deadlift, puts more stress on your central nervous system than any other exercises for different reasons. First of all, your whole body is working. Second, the weight that you're using is very heavy. Third, the number of reps you're doing is very low. So you're absolutely putting yourself under tremendous stress. Most of the time, deadlift is performed anywhere from 1 to 3 reps, sometimes 4, rarely 5. Why? Because this attempts to lift the heaviest weight possible cannot be in 20 reps, because this is now you're shifting into a different type of workout, which is bodybuilding workout. But this exercise, once again, puts more stress on your central nervous system than anything else. So even if you incorporate deadlift in your bodybuilding workout, thinking that it has to be there for whatever reasons, which I don't advise, you need to understand that by doing this exercise, you will be stressing yourself, your central nervous system, much more than from anything else that you do in other exercises, especially if you are doing them, as I advise, with recommended number of reps and recommended number of sets. And if you train every muscle group once per week. So that will make sure that your central nervous system is not overstressed. Because central nervous system, and this is answer to many people who ask this question, is not related to how many sessions per week you do, but how intense you perform, understanding intensity of maximum effort with maximum weight. So if you never do 1, 2, 3 reps, if you do 12 reps or up to 20 for legs, you will never be as stressed as if you do 3 reps, super heavy weight, deadlifts, squats, bench press, whatever. Because that amount of weight, stress, burns out your central nervous system, and especially deadlift. So you should preserve your central nervous system. When you finish your leg workout or chest workout, yes, your legs, they should be really exhausted. Your legs should be trained properly. They will be tired. You will be walking slowly down the stairs carefully because you can't control them. But your central nervous system will be okay. It's not going to be super stressed. Every single session that I do is extremely effective and exhausting to the particular muscle, but not to my central nervous system. And this is the key. This is bodybuilding all about. This is why so many bodybuilders, all these legends in bodybuilding, train the way that I'm advising you to do. High number of reps, high number of sets. Yes, you exhaust your muscle, but you don't exhaust your central nervous system. Because if you over-exhaust your central nervous system, you won't be able to grow. It takes over a week to recover that super stress CNS. This is the reason why you should stay away from traditional heavy deadlifts. So after everything we have discussed today, what is the conclusion? Am I saying that conventional deadlift is a bad exercise? Not at all. In fact, this is one of the best exercises ever created. If you are a power lifter or strength athlete, yes, you should do deadlift. But if you're a bodybuilder, this is the last exercise that you should consider. And my advice is you should be avoiding this exercise for the reasons mentioned. Bodybuilding is not about demonstrating maximum strength. Bodybuilding is all about building the best muscle possible with minimum risk of injuries. The best bodybuilding exercises are not the ones that allow you to lift the most weight. The best bodybuilding exercises are the ones that allow you to put highest amount of tension on the targeted muscle. These exercises will allow you to train harder, recover faster, stay healthier, and continue progressing year after year. And again, when you're performing deadlift, you may say, oh, but I'm using all my muscles. Yes, you use them, but not fully. So there are much better exercises for your hamstrings. As I mentioned, straight leg deadlifts, leg curls. Also for your lower back, you should perform hyperextensions. When it comes to traps, a lot of people say, oh, I'm doing deadlift, give me tremendous traps. But there are better exercises than deadlift. You can do shrugs. Your traps will grow. Everybody who has great traps, they didn't build them by doing deadlift. They build them by doing shrugs. So when you see all these bodybuilding exercises that I have mentioned will always give you better growth and much safer and allow you to progress sustainably, probably for the rest of your life, without any injuries. So these are benefits which are simply overwhelming of particular exercises for particular muscle groups comparing to deadlift, which affects all of them, but none of them fully, none of them to the point that they will optimally grow. So after over 40 years in bodybuilding, competing 46 times, winning 17 titles, and also coaching over 3,500 clients and helping them to get in the best shape of their lives, I have published for you 13 ebooks which are fully loaded with everything you always wanted to know about bodybuilding. So if you want to expand your horizons and deepen your knowledge, click on the link in the comments and you can download my ebooks and benefit as thousands of people have already benefited from them. Also, for the ones who want to learn how to train in perfect form, I have published for you Bodybuilding Blueprint course, in which I personally demonstrate and explain the most effective exercises for all major muscle groups. So for the ones who want to learn how to train in perfect form and stop wasting time in the gym, click on the link in the comments and you can access my Bodybuilding Blueprint course. So guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, also send me your comments, and I will see you in the next video.